are live on ABC's KMET 1490 AM.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. And I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On a telephone line, I welcome to the program a legendary guitarist and co-founder of the American rock band, the Romantics. We welcome in the legendary Mike Skill. Mike, Brian C., honored to have you.
All right, Brian, how you doing? Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, no, everything's great. And listen, I appreciate you coming on. I know it's early. You know, I enjoy your music, enjoy the band. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm on the West Coast today. Yep.
Yeah, so Mike, I want to begin by touching upon your early beginnings in music. How did it all begin for a guitarist, Mike Skill?
Oh gosh, it's a long and winding road. My brothers in the 1950s and 60s, close to the 60s, they had records, 45 records, and they had a lot of like Little Richard and Buddy Holly, and a lot of doo-wop groups, like East Coast doo-wop groups. You know, the really 1950s stuff, the black rhythm and blues groups, and the Italian guys singing and all that. And my brother and I, we were really small, and we used to take their records out and play them on our little toy record player, and get in trouble afterwards for playing with the records. and so I heard a lot of really good stuff, you know, Jerry Lee Lewis, and it really stuck with me. Later on, I would see Ricky Nelson on TV, on his TV show, and they did this live, like the band played Ricky Nelson, and he did songs, and that was really cool. It was like an early version of MTV or something at the end of his parents' TV show. And then, you know, you had a lot of the soul music came out. We moved up to Detroit. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and here you had Smokey Robinson singing You Better Shop Around. So I got the early days of Motown when I was somewhere around 10 years old. And so I had all that Motown stuff, and then the Beatles and Animals, really the Animals, the Kinks, and the Stones, and that stuff came out, and that's what my guitar playing started, was right around the Beatles, Stones, and Animals and Kinks. The Kinks really did it for me with You Really Got Me, and it's just like it was a raw thing. It was really good, really cool.
And Mike, you mentioned Detroit, and that's where the Romantics formed, right?
Yes, and then right after that British invasion, the Detroit bands started forming teen bands, teen clubs, and you'd have bands like Iggy Pop was playing drums with a band and backing up a band, and he played the teen clubs, and Bob Seger was playing teen clubs. He was probably like 19 or 20 years old, 19 years old. Ted Nugent and let's see, Mark Farner from Grand Funk Railroad. He was in a teen band, like early teens, before he was known, called The Pack, which became Terry Knight and the Pack, and then Grand Funk. And God, yeah, it was like there's a great two handfuls of bands running around Detroit playing all the teen clubs. Of course, I was just young still. I was 14 years old. I couldn't really get in there, and I didn't have a car. So, but I heard all the news about it from all the other kids that were older, a bit older. Yeah.
Now you formed your very first band in junior high school. It was called High Tide.
Yeah, that would be junior high school. Just before high school, and we were learning all those songs. We were learning like the Seeds, Pushing Too Hard, the Yardbirds songs, For Your Love, that kind of stuff. Learning all the guitar stuff. Van Morrison and them, you know, Baby Please Don't Go. And then we had all the Motown stuff and soul bands. Detroit had a lot of soul bands. I think the East Coast, like Jersey and New York, they had a lot of soul bands at that time too, the early 60s. Like lounge bands, lounge acts. There were no rock clubs. There were no, I don't think people realize that there were no rock clubs in the late 50s and early 60s. There were bars and lounges, you know. You have ladies, the piano bars, and women singing and men singing standard songs, you know, Frank Sinatra and that kind of stuff. And then all this rock and roll happened with the Beatles and Stones, and the only place you could really play was like roller skating rinks or theaters. And then the bars started turning later on in the late 60s, started turning into rock clubs. when kids could drink at 18 in Michigan, 18 years old, and then Alice Cooper was out, and the song 18 came out, and so then Iggy Pop and all that started happening in Detroit. His raw version of them. So, yeah.
So like,
I was like in the middle of a massive soup of great rock and roll and early stuff.
Right. So talk about the formation of the Romantics. I know the original lineup consisted of Wally Palmer, lead guitarist and vocalist, yourself, and Rich Cole and drummer Marinos, right?
Yeah, all four of us were lead singers. We all sang songs in the set. But before that, it was me and Jimmy. Me and Jimmy, the drummer, were running around Detroit and hanging out and playing, meeting all the musician friends, and they were playing all the bars. We were staying away from the bars, those lounges, playing cover songs. And we'd go to our little studio, our little rehearsal hall we had on the east side of Detroit, and we'd just go there and create songs and jam and, learn, pick up different guitar players, looking for singers and that kind of thing, and constantly learning how to write songs, learning how to present us as a band and actually have a look and a sound and, and then you had, Roxy Music comes out, and Bowie and all the glitter bands came out. So we were all like involved in that and learning to write. And we almost started a group that was along the same kind of, all the girls were listening, a lot of the girls were listening to when the glitter groups came out, Brian Ferry and T-Rex and all that stuff. So we were kind of getting into that, Monte Hoople. And because, the bands were dressed really well and looked good. It was getting out of away from all the jamming and blues groups, my favorite bands, Humble Pie and all that. But really guitar bands in the early 70s, we're geared, a lot of guys would go see and dig it. It was more like that kind of thing. And at the theaters, the ballrooms, and a lot of jamming. And then a lot of good songs came out from Monte Hoople and David Bowie and Brian Ferry, and so a lot of the fashion thing came in. So a lot of clothes and the look changed, and and then of course the punk scene happened, and so it was just a natural progression. Yeah, so we were drawing from all that. When the punk thing happened, we were drawing from that, the raw side of it, the raw high energy side. It took us right back to the MC5 thing, and.
And you mentioned the punk rock scene. What was your experience playing as CBGBs?
Let's see. Our they weren't really managers. These guys, they managed a burger stand in Detroit, a Big Boy's Burger, and and we allowed them to become our managers for a few years. And they called up Hilly over at CBGBs, and this was in like the early days of the band, and. It was a band just before the Romantics. Me and Jimmy were in, and we went over. The guitar player's girlfriend and a couple other kids came with us, and we went to. We wrote a bunch of songs. They called up Hilly. We got a gig. We drove. We rented a truck. Me and Jimmy drove to New York in the truck. The truck broke down. We get to New York and played CBGBs. I met Dee Dee Ramone and. They were at the show, and it was a very small crowd. But Dee Dee Ramone and Sylvain we met, and it was a really good experience. We put together an extra tour, to go out and get a truck and move the equipment and go there, and made it back home. And then we kind of broke up, and then a few months later we started thinking about what we're going to do next. Me and Jimmy were always trying to put together something that would like take us to the top, and we saw Wally somewhere playing, and I saw him at a school, and I got his number from a previous, bumping into him previously, and I called him up and asked him if he would audition for me and Jimmy and see how he was. So he came over and auditioned, and he brought his friend. So it was me and Jimmy, and then we brought in Rich and Wally, and that became the Romantics. And 2 months later, what happened was the MC5 from Detroit broke up in the early 70s, and then this would be later 70s, 1976, 76, 77. Rob Tyner, the singer from MC5, came over with my guitar player, who used to be a guitar player that used to be in our band when we were in high school, Robert Gillespie, and bless his soul, he just passed away. But he came over with Rob Tyner, the lead singer from the MC5, and they were going to do a show, what do you call it, for the press and for radio, a showcase, and for their new songs and the new version of the MC5. And there was going to be two members from the MC5 and 3 new guys. So they came over and watched us, and we had our tight pants, like punk look, and short hair, and real energetic attitude, moving around on stage and that kind of thing in our little studio. And all the songs were real short and catchy and real good melodies and harmonies and that kind of thing. And these guys were coming from like a 70s thing. They had, more like bell bottoms and long hair and that kind of thing. They were still kind of in that thing. So when they played, we opened the show, and all the press saw the Romantics, and they kind of, unfortunately for them, they kind of moved over towards us, started talking to us about what our future was, and the record labels were talking to us, and Capitol Records, and so the thing started moving. It started taking off, and we were welcomed back 2 weeks later and opened for at this little club in Detroit that we played, and opened for Mick DeVille, Willie DeVille's band out of New York, and great band. And we opened for that, and then the next show our manager Scott was about 3 or 4 months later. Our third show ever was at the Pontiac Silverdome in suburbs of Detroit. For somehow they got it. I don't know how, but it was Steve Miller, Jay Giles, Peter Frampton, and Romantics opened up at about 7 o'clock at night. Everybody's filing in, but it's the biggest show we ever played, biggest crowd we ever played. Our third show, probably about 5,000-6,000 people coming in, coming for the show, the big groups, and and it went over. No one threw anything at us, Detroit audiences. No one threw anything or booed or anything, and it went over. So we were on our way. Next thing you know, we're traveling to Detroit, to New York and Philly and Boston. So it just grew from that. Yeah, that's it. And 3 years later, we got signed to Emperor Records out of New York. Nat Weiss, CBS. Emperor Records. It was a subsidiary of Epic Portrait and CBS Records. Epic Portrait, CBS. So we were on an independent label, and that's it. Yeah, put out 3 singles. When I Look in Your Eyes, Tell It to Carrie, and What I Like About You. They all went up into the top 100, but dropped off. And when What I Like About You, the third song, was dropping off the charts at 74, I think it went up to, or 47, and it dropped off the charts. They said we had toured the U.S. and Canada that first year, about 8 months, and into it, and the label and the management thought we should get in and do a brand new record. So I had to come up with a bunch of new guitar parts and guitar ideas and melodies and present them to everybody. And they had to, everybody had to come up with lyrics or titles and everything. So we had to come up with a new record within 1 year of that first record, which is crazy. That's crazy. We should have been out touring Europe and everything, but the management, I think, made a boo-boo there and advised us to do that. And next thing you know, I was fired from the band a few months later. Because a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure for the look, and I didn't want to follow wearing the same suits and all that kind of look. I wanted a little more punk and raw attitude, and you can see it on the second album of the Romantics, but then I was gone after that and came back a little later after that when they needed someone to write more songs. Anyway,
we're talking with guitarist Mike Skill of the Romantics, who joins the program. Mike, I want to get this in. Which song do you feel is the band's anthem? Do you feel is Talking in Your Sleep, or What I Like About You?
Well, on the first album, that era was like during the punk days that were happening, and the new wave, all the new wave bands, Ramones and Blondie, and Blondie, really Ramones, and all the raw rockin' bands, Johnny Thunders, New York Dolls, were our favorites, and then E.D. and MC5 and all that. Those were all our favorite bands, and we were in New York a lot, and we saw Tough Darts and all those bands. A lot of bands that were coming up, a lot of groups out of there, the Planets and a lot of groups. There were a lot of groups coming up in New York, and so we were influenced by England, New York, and L.A. too as well. And so it was a raw. When we went to the studio, all these bands went to the studio. They would do it in like one or two takes, play the song, one or two takes, maybe not even fix it really, fix a vocal maybe, or fix a guitar, a bad guitar part or something. But really left it really raw. That was the era right then. And then by the time that was the first record for Romantics, it was really straight ahead pop, rock and roll, raw. And then by the time I came back in the band, the second album was like that too. It was pretty much raw, hard-edged rock and roll. But by the time I came back, they had released the record in between, and then our fourth record came out. And by that time, you had all these bands coming out like Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, Squeeze, Nick Lowe. Production was getting more glamorous, more, what do you call it? They were spending more money on production values for the songs and music. So that album is a lot more pop and more danceable and more, it's more glossy, more, the edges, the rough edges are taken off. So my favorite is What I Like About You, and I think What I Like About You would be the raw rock and roll thing, but Talking Or Sleeping would be the dance, rhythm and blues kind of track, Rolling Stones rhythm and blues kind of track. Yeah.
Yeah, and you also, I mean, the Romantics were also part of that MTV Video Evolution, the beginnings
Yeah.
of the MTV craze. Did you like creating those videos for MTV?
Yeah, we were all into that because when we were growing up and learning how to play and all that, we saw the Who and the Yardbirds. Sometimes on our TV shows here, we had a show called Swingin' Time, and all the bands, the new bands, Ted Nugent and Cherry Night in the Pack, which became Grand Funk, and MC5. They were on this TV show, and then you get videos from England. You get the Who doing My Generation, or you get the Kinks or something, and they'd be doing a song, and those videos were a big deal, and we loved seeing them because we got to see how those bands were, what they looked like, and how they played. We learned so much looking at it. And then also those bands were doing a lot of commercials, like radio and TV commercials in England. Like Yardbirds would do a mod perfume commercials, or Yardbirds would do a commercial for mod clothes, or ladies' mini skirts, or something. It'd be something mod, and or milkshakes, or pimple cream, or whatever. But they make those videos, so we were all into it. It didn't matter if it was on, MTV, or if it was on TV commercials. But yeah, that was a big deal for us. We were all into it, and we did What I Like About You was the first video. What I Like About You, and When I Look in Your Eyes. We were playing the. I was still in the band before the second album, and or as the second album came out, but just before it, we were going to, I think, Australia. I didn't get this mixed up. And we were on the West Coast, and we were playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, and these guys had called us a few weeks before, and they were from Holland, and they said, What I Like About You is climbing up the charts in the Netherlands, in France, and Germany. They wanted to come over and do a video. And so, because the TV shows over there were still doing video, there was no MTV yet here. And so we said, yeah, sure, we're doing that. We're playing the Whiskey A Go-Go, come there, and we'll do a sound check. And after the sound check, we could do a video. So that video shot at the famous Whiskey A Go-Go, where the Doors played and all the bands, Velvet Underground, all the bands played there live. And so these guys came with like one camera. I mean, this is like early days of video for us. And one camera, they flew over, probably got dinner, a flight, a hotel, and flew back. It probably cost us $5,000 or something, compared to later on when we're spending like $40,000, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 on videos. But they came over as one of the best videos, $5,000 or whatever, and it took like 3 takes, close up. I suggested, let's do it kind of like Hard Day's Night, but with a punk edge or a raw Detroit edge. So you get a close-up to the face, close-up to the hands, close-up to the guitars and drums, and then maybe 6 feet away, and then maybe 20 feet away. So I had that kind of you get the real close-up imagery, and then the energy of the band far away. And so then we did What I Like About You, and next thing you know, we're on MTV. Not much later, I think it was maybe 6 months or 8 months, maybe a year, but I think it's 6 or 8 months later. The next year, I think it was.
It's fascinating stuff. I have about 5 minutes. I want to talk about your new release. Talk about your new album, and then I'm going to play a cut.
Yeah. That's my new record. I put together a bunch of songs before and during the pandemic, and it got to a point where I had all this stuff in the grips of my hand, and I had recorded in my little studio in Portland, Oregon here, and on the West Coast, and in Chicago at our friends. Oh God, I'm going to forget his name. I'm trying to think too fast. In Chicago at Mike Hagler's studio, and also at Pearl Sound in Detroit at Chuck Occasion's studio. So Chuck took these songs in Detroit at Pearl Sound, and he mixed them. And when I got them back, I had mixed them already, these songs I had that you're going to hear. And he took them to a whole nother level. I had them mixed very basically, and he got them, and he put them in like a realm that they jumped off the speaker, and that's what you're going to hear when you hear this. I think you're playing My Bad Pretty, one of the first songs I wrote, I think.
Yep. Let's hear it now. My Bad Pretty.
Yeah.
And you just heard My Bad Pretty by Mike Skill. Mike Skill's with us. Fantastic sound, Mike. Great job.
Thank you, man. Yeah, that's me and Brad Elvis from the Romantics with and the Handcuffs. He's got a band like that called that. And Brad Elvis, my drummer, and a few other people on there. And I put that together in the past few years with just around the pandemic was starting up, and got it all mixed up and put it out. Yeah, I should be in the New York area in April, I think. And so far, I'm going to Detroit next week, and I'm doing shows here and there. And the new record, the album, will come out next year, I hope. We had to push it back because everything was so crowded. You couldn't get a record out, the vinyl. But that's coming up. Thanks.
So, Mike, mention your website. Where can the listening audience pick up your new release? Go right ahead.
Yeah, it's MikeSkill.com, and all the streaming services, every one of them it's available on, and Apple Music, Bandcamp, all of them, and what is it called? All the streaming sites, and yeah, so it's available through Mike Skill, and I have a 45 that I played a song called 67 Riot with Wayne Kramer from the MC5 that you can get through MikeSkill.com. Just send us a note.
MikeSkill.com. Now, Mike, for the listening audience, now, so you'll be touring, you said the East Coast, because I'm on the East Coast right now.
Yes, I'm for sure. It looks like April. I'll be in there. There's a benefit, a memorial for at the Bowery Electric or Bowery Ballroom, one of them, Bowery Electric, and it's like down the road from where CBGBs was, right next block over, and should be in there in April, and there'll be some other dates added on to that coming up. So yeah. It looks like a good thing happened. That's my own group, my own thing on the side here, and you can always catch Romantics down the road.
And the website is MikeSkill.com. The new track or the new release is called Skill, Mike Skill. Please pick it up now. Mike, I appreciate your time. Big fan.
Brian, I hope I didn't take up too much oxygen. I was trying to fit in all the information. Thank you.
No, you did a fantastic job. I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
Well, thank you to KMET 1490, man. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. You just heard the legendary guitarist, Mike Skill. Please pick up his new release, Skill, Mike Skill. Until next week, happy collecting to all.